Hi, and welcome to the Boss Audits and Investigations. And thank you for joining me for another episode of the Scientology Chronicles. Today, we're going to go through an interview that LRH Jr. Uh, had with a detective in Los Angeles back in 1970. And I think it's very interesting what he has to say. So let's November 25th, 1970. And it is an interview with L. Ron Hubbard Jr. On November 24th, 1970, I interviewed L. Ron Hubbard Jr. at the Jolly Roger restaurant in the Whitwood Shopping Center. I had previously arranged with Mr. Hubbard to meet him at the Jolly Roger during his lunch break. He works as a route salesman for the Singer Sewing Center in Whitwood Center. Mr. Hubbard is the son of L. Ron Hubbard Sr., founder and head of Scientology. Mr. Hubbard was bright red hair, wears glasses, and appears to be about 40 years old. I asked Mr. Hubbard where he lived now. He stated that he had just moved into a house on High Street in Whittier, California. The Bureau of Drugs, attention, Bud Loftus, November 27th, 1970. For your information, this interview with L. Ron Hubbard Jr. shows a number of interesting things. First, he still feels the same way about Scientology as he did in 1968. That is a complete failure. He feels quite strongly about this. Secondly, that in 1968, he signed a counter deposition prepared by the organization, reversing his testimony he gave in the Internal Revenue Service trial. He admits that the counter deposition was given not because of a change in beliefs, but essentially for the protection of his family. He has received 15 or 20 letters that could be considered harassing. He names a sister who is in the movement who can attempt to interview if you so request. We will keep you advised of our progress in the investigation. I asked Mr. Hubbard for his current views on Scientology and to describe any recent association he has had with the organization. He stated that his position is the same as expressed to the Food and Drug Administration and the Justice Department back in 1968 when he was potential rebuttal witness in the e-meter trial. He feels that Scientology is a failure. Mr. Hubbard briefly reviewed his background in Scientology. He stated that he was first aware of Scientology in 1947, then became involved in the organization in 1950. While in the organization, he held about every position of importance, including head of the Hubbard Guardian Center in Washington, D.C. He was very active in the organization until 1960 when he left Scientology and toured the United States on his own, lecturing and processing through contacts he had made while active in the organization. In February 1962, he discontinued all contact with Scientology as he came to the realization that Scientology did not do what it says it does. He stated that his change in beliefs was a gradual one that began several years ago before this date and culminated with this strong conviction about Scientology's failure. Mr. Hubbard stated he was not proud of what he had done while associated with Scientology. Mr. Hubbard continued that he was very proud of his 6 children, the oldest, a 13-year-old boy who is a superb athlete, the youngest, a preschool child. He stated that he works with his children a great deal, and the 5 children in school attain excellent grades. Mr. Hubbard stated he believes in God and that he has presented God and religion to his children for their own personal acceptance or rejection. Mr. Hubbard stated that his family moved into the Los Angeles area in July of 1968. At that time, he had several talks with the local Scientology organization, attempting to keep things quiet for the sake of his children. At that time, he signed a counter deposition prepared by the organization, reversing the testimony he had presented in the Internal Revenue Service trial. He stated that the information in this counter deposition was essentially a change of opinion. He signed this deposition in the Los Angeles office of Bob Thomas, Scientology Guardian. He does not know if this deposition has been used in any manner. I asked Mr. Hubbard if he had attested to opinions in the counter deposition that he actually did not believe, and if so, why? He replied that he had, and he did this for the protection of his own children. I asked him if he or his family had ever been threatened or physically attacked by the organization. He replied negatively, but added that following his testimony in the IRS trial, he received 15 or 20 letters from the organization depicting a death scene of a previous neighbor and friend of his that he had known when formerly living in the Los Angeles area. His friend had accidentally shot himself. Mr. Hubbard stated that he forwarded all of these letters to the attorney handling the IRS case in Washington, D.C. Mr. Hubbard stated that 3 letters implied that he, Hubbard, had knowledge of or association with the death. Mr. Hubbard stated he has not had recent contact with the organization and has not seen his father since the late 1950s. He has a full sister involved in the organization. She is Mrs. Catherine Gillespie, North Hollywood, California. I asked Mr. Hubbard to explain his conclusion that Scientology was a failure. He stated that Scientology is dead wrong, that it does not totally free individuals from aberrations, nor reduce or clear mental hangups. He said that Scientology treats only the mind or mental condition, and thereby exists a high degree of irresponsibility to the treatment of the physical being. He continued that he considers Scientology a religion and that it deals with the spirit, but that it is completely ineffective as a religion. He believes that it fails to free the spirit and to give one spiritual freedom. I asked Mr. Hubbard if the Scientology organization was a violent one. He stated that Scientology considers itself a world apart from society and a world in which anything and everything is possible. He stated that the Scientology organization practices and the philosophy of the end justifying the means. He believes there is considerable violence only within the organization. He stated that the reasons for violence is control of organization members. He stated the ethics review board in the organization is used to implement control. He added that with the advent of the Sea Org, specialized groups of troubleshooters are dispatched from the Sea Org to enforce L. Ron Hubbard Sr.'s politics and eliminate divergent views and redirect individuals out of line. He believes the Sea Org makes a concerted effort to reclaim individuals who have dropped out of Scientology. He could not name any specific individuals. Mr. Hubbard considers the Sea Org a paramilitary / religious group and believes it operates torpedo boats from a secret base on the coast of Baja, Mexico. I asked Mr. Hubbard how defections were explained within the organization. He replied that a negative third party is always introduced into the picture and blamed for the loss of a member. The third force varies to fit the situation and receives the brunt of the organization vindictiveness for the loss of a member. Mr. Hubbard described his father as a master of group control. Mr. Hubbard stated his father makes sure that no one besides himself gets too powerful within the organization, and added that his father builds members of the organization to very high levels, then repudiates them once they have attained that level. Then repudiates them once they have attained that then repudiates them once they have attained that level. Mr. Hubbard added that he considers Scientology a very badly run business. He feels that large sums of money are squandered on items such as ships, land bases, etc., and that the administration of finances is chaotic. He stated that his father's wife, Mary Sue Hubbard, makes most of the decisions regarding finances. I asked Mr. Hubbard if he had any knowledge of Quentin Hubbard's attempted suicide. He replied that he had not seen his half brother since he was a little boy, and he had no knowledge of the suicide attempt. He stated that if such were true, he could well understand such an event, considering the tremendous pressure placed upon the quote unquote successor to be within Scientology. I asked him when he last heard from his father, and he replied that it has been many years, although his father sends Christmas cards to his grandchildren. He stated that he would like to meet his father again as a father and not as the head of Scientology. I told Mr. Hubbard that I would discontinue the interview at this point and probably contact him in the near future for continued dialogue. He indicated he would be amenable to additional interviews and stated he was normally off on Tuesdays. Well, this is an interesting document. You know, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., interestingly enough, he did do this deposition that he was basically coerced, during the IRS trial. And I think he was afraid for his children. I mean, the guy had, he had 6 kids that he was trying to protect. It's interesting how he describes, all of these letters that he had received, harassing letters. And then he ends up getting a letter that's depicting a death scene of a previous neighbor and friend of his that he had known formerly, that, that lived in the Los Angeles area. And then, of course, he gets a letter that's implying that he's the one that committed the murder of the neighbor. If that's not fair gaming at its core, I can't imagine what else could be considered fair gaming. Um, it's sad that he describes that he still, he still would love to see his father as a father, but not as the head of Scientology. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments about this interview of L. Ron Hubbard Jr. and what he had to say about his dad, about his children, how he tried to protect his kids and his family. It's another lesson to be learned that even Hubbard's own children saw the fraud that he was, and that Scientology doesn't really work, and that Scientology doesn't do what it says it's supposed to do. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this interview of L. Ron Hubbard Jr. And no more kids in Scientology. Kids can't consent. And remember to spread love and kindness wherever you go. And I'll catch you on the next one.